In a future world, running is actually illegal. The moment the man realizes this, he immediately stops in his tracks. He was terrified that others might figure out he was just a poor guy who'd struck it rich overnight. To hide his impoverished background, he immediately books a presidential suite at a five-star hotel. But strangely enough, the front desk doesn't ask him for money. Instead, they scan his arm with some device and hand him the key. It turns out that in this future world, people don't spend money anymore, they spend time. Everyone is born with a timer on their arm. It's not just currency, but also a countdown to their death. Once that timer hits 0, they die instantly. But as long as it keeps ticking, they can live forever. 2 days ago, Will was just another poor guy living in the slums, scraping by on odd jobs to make ends meet. Even though he worked hard and took his job seriously, his boss would still stiff him on overtime pay. Will was angry but didn't dare speak up because if he quit, he'd starve to death before finding another job. Desperate to change his situation, Will started picking up shifts at a local bar. That's where he met a middle-aged man who would completely change his life. This guy had a whopping 100 years on his arm, equivalent to about $2 million in purchasing power. But his flashy display of wealth quickly caught the attention of some bad guys from the ghetto. Will, being a decent person, warned the rich man to get out of there, but the guy didn't seem fazed at all. Soon enough, a gang of time thieves showed up at the bar. These guys made their living by robbing people's time. But even when faced with a life-or-death situation, the rich man stayed completely calm. In fact, he casually announced he needed to hit the bathroom first while he was in there throwing up. Will, who had been hiding behind the door, took down one of the thugs and managed to get the rich guy out of there. Using his knowledge of the local terrain, Will led him to an abandoned building where they managed to hide from their pursuers. Seeing that the rich man could still laugh in this situation, Will couldn't understand why he'd come to the slums flashing his wealth around. Turns out the rich man's wife had died and he'd lost all reason to keep living. At over 100 years old, he'd become completely numb to life. He also revealed a brutal truth to Will. 90% of the world's time is controlled by the wealthy. They manipulate prices in poor districts and suppress wages to drive up the cost of living. This forces people to keep working